They were supposed to be doctors, the pride of Ayegbaju. Instead, their names would soon be whispered with shame in every street corner. On the edge of a dusty football field where dreams once soared like eagles, Chuka and Chidi Okonkwo stood at the crossroads of destiny, and never even knew it. Born minutes apart, they were legends in their town before they even reached manhood. Brilliant, respectful, full of the kind of promise parents pray for at night. Teachers pointed at them with pride. Neighbors spoke of them with envy. But promises are fragile things. One bad choice, one careless night, and everything their parents built would come crashing down like a house in a storm. It all started the night they decided books could wait, but fun could not. Just one night, Chidi said, laughter dancing in his voice. One night to breathe. That night, they didn't just open the doors to a nightclub. They opened a door that would swallow their futures whole. The club pulsed like a living beast, neon lights slicing through the darkness, the bass hammering deep into the chest. Chuka paused outside, a twinge of guilt flickering through him as he remembered his mother's face that morning. The way she kissed his forehead, whispering prayers over his exam results. Chidi, ever the daring one, nudged him forward. Come on, bro. You deserve to live a little. One drink won't kill you. Inside, the world was a blur of bodies, laughter, and clinking glass. A bottle appeared in Chuka's hand like magic. Cold, heavy, full of promises it could never keep. He hesitated. The club air smelled of smoke, cheap perfume, and something more dangerous, freedom without consequence. The first sip burned like fire, and tasted like rebellion. In that moment, Chuka didn't just swallow alcohol. He swallowed the last of his innocence. Somewhere across town, Mrs. Okonkwo was still awake, sewing a torn school uniform by candlelight. Smiling, believing her sons were safe, working toward their bright future. She had no idea that tonight, their future was already slipping through her fingers like water. They met them that night, the Golden Crew, as they called themselves. Slick talkers with easy smiles, the type who ordered bottles like water and laughed louder than the music. They draped fake success over themselves like expensive suits, but their eyes told a different story. Empty, hungry, restless. Chidi was drawn in immediately. These were the big boys he had only seen in movies. Chuka hesitated, but the pressure was heavier than any warning voice inside him. Who wants to be the odd one out? Within an hour, they were clinking glasses, laughing at jokes they didn't understand, promising themselves it was just fun. But that night, new bonds formed, bonds that would strangle everything they loved. Morning classes became optional. Homework was an afterthought. Attendance records showed a steady decline, but the boys didn't notice or didn't care. The streets became their new classroom. The club was their lecture hall. Bottles taught them confidence, bravado, and the dangerous lie that consequences were only for small-minded people. Teachers shook their heads. Mr. Dada, their mathematics teacher, called home twice, warning the Okonkwos that something was very wrong. Mrs. Okonkwo cried that night, clutching Chuka's framed Best Student award from 2 years ago. "Where are my sons?" she whispered. But when she looked into their glazed eyes at breakfast, she knew they were right there. And yet already so far gone. The fast life demands fast money. Bottles don't buy themselves. Chidi started borrowing from friends, then lying about school fees to squeeze cash from his father. When that ran dry, the twins began running small errands for their Golden Crew friends, errands that paid in cash but robbed them of something deeper every time. Chuka noticed the difference. The guilt gnawed at him during quiet moments, but quiet moments were rare these days. Noise was safer. One night, Chuka asked Chidi, "Bro, you think Mama would be proud of this?" Chidi laughed bitterly. "Proud doesn't pay for drinks, my guy." And just like that, the last strings tying them to their dreams snapped. It was supposed to be simple. Pick up a package, deliver it across town, get paid. No questions asked. The Golden Crew made it sound like Uber driving. But when Chuka opened the package out of curiosity, his stomach twisted in horror. It wasn't textbooks. It wasn't clothes. It was pills, hundreds of them. Chuka wanted to run. Wanted to go home. wanted to rewind time. But Chidi's hand clamped down on his shoulder. Just this once, bro. After this, we stop. They delivered the package. They got paid. And somewhere in that silent transaction, something inside them, something sacred, was sold off forever. Mrs. Okonkwo found the crumpled wad of cash in Chidi's old school bag. It wasn't just the money, it was the smell of betrayal on it. She confronted her sons, desperation leaking from her every word. Where is this from? Answer me. Chuka's mouth opened but no words came. Chidi, arms folded, shrugged. Hustle, mama. Everyone hustles. A slap cracked the room open like thunder. Tears spilled down Mrs. Okonkwo's face, but it wasn't from anger. It was grief. The grief of watching your children turn into strangers right before your eyes. The twins stormed out of the house that night, and the distance between them and home grew wider than they could ever imagine. The letter came in a brown envelope. Mrs. Okonkwo clutched it with trembling hands, unwilling to believe it. Suspended indefinitely, disrespecting teachers, missing exams, fighting after school. The same boys who once brought honor were now a public shame. The neighbors whispered. Church members avoided eye contact. Invitations to events dried up. The Okonkwo family, once celebrated, became a cautionary tale. The worst part? Chuka and Chidi didn't even care. The club world was louder, brighter, more forgiving. Or so they thought. The deeper they sank into the fast life, the darker their world became. Bottles turned to blunts. Blunts turned to pills. Nights stretched into mornings they barely remembered. Fun became survival. The Golden Crew no longer treated them like friends. They treated them like errand boys. But by now, the twins needed the acceptance too badly to notice the disrespect. They weren't just trading books for bottles anymore. They were trading their souls for a seat at a table that would never truly welcome them. It happened on a rainy Friday night. The twins were caught in a random police sweep outside a dingy club. The officers found pills in their friend's car, and it didn't matter who it belonged to. Everyone was bundled into the back of the black van. Chuka shivered from more than just the cold. The reality hit him. This wasn't a game anymore. At the station, they spent hours sitting on a cracked bench, handcuffed together like common criminals. When Mr. Okonkwo arrived, shame wrapped around him like a wet cloth. "Is this what I worked my bones off for?" he asked, voice hoarse. The twins couldn't even meet his eyes. They were released the next morning, but freedom tasted bitter. Word had already spread. Everyone in Ayegbaju now knew. The Okonkwo family's name was officially in the mud. Mrs. Okonkwo didn't say a word when they walked into the house. She simply turned her back and continued sweeping the front yard. Nothing hurts more than when your mother no longer prays aloud for you, but cries silently instead. The twins told themselves it was just a bad night. They could fix it. They would fix it. But when you pour poison into your own future, fixing it takes more than just promises. It takes a miracle. Their dream scholarship letters were revoked quietly, respectfully. A polite note explained that recent behaviors were inconsistent with the university's standards. Mr. Okonkwo stood outside, reading the letter under the harsh sun, the words blurring from the sting in his eyes. This wasn't just a loss of money. It was a loss of legacy. When he came inside, he didn't yell. He simply sat down and began removing the framed awards from the walls, one by one. And the walls grew emptier, just like their future. With their real family disappointed and distant, Chuka and Chidi clung harder to the Golden Crew. Blood is who rides for you, they were told. And because they were desperate for belonging, they believed it. But the crew had no loyalty. They used the twins for riskier jobs, street runs, fake deals, small scams. And every mission sank the twins deeper into a life that would soon cost more than money. It was supposed to be just another wild Friday night. Music so loud it rattled your teeth. Bottles lined up like soldiers. But that night, one of the Golden Crew, Kelvin, collapsed on the dance floor. Panic ripped through the club. Sirens wailed minutes later. By the time the twins stumbled outside, breathing hard, Kelvin's body was already draped under a white sheet. Dead. Gone. Just like that. And still, the party raged on. Like life itself was drunk and didn't care who it stepped on. Chuka felt a crack open inside him that night. A small voice whispered, "This is the end of the road if you don't turn back." But Chidi just poured another drink. After Kelvin's death, the crew got quieter. More paranoid. Deals got messier. The police started hovering closer. Chuka noticed it all, but fear paralyzed him. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. One evening, he tried to talk to Chidi. "Bro, we need to chill. This path doesn't end well." Chidi waved him off. "Scared boys don't eat. We didn't come this far to act soft." Chuka wanted to scream. Wanted to grab his brother and drag him home. But some battles are lost long before you even pick up the sword. They began moving differently. Chuka found himself lingering after deliveries, staring at old classrooms through broken fences. Wondering what life would have been if he'd just said no that first night. Chidi, on the other hand, threw himself deeper into the chaos. More clubs, more girls, more pills. The brothers, once inseparable, now shared only blood and silence. And every silent dinner at home felt like a funeral. This time, it was worse. Caught with enough pills to call it trafficking, not just possession. Handcuffs. Flashing lights. Headlines. Mr. Okonkwo nearly collapsed at the police station. Mrs. Okonkwo refused to leave her prayer closet for 3 days. But prayers don't erase criminal records. Bail was set high. Too high. And neighbors, who once smiled and waved, now crossed the street to avoid the Okonkwo family. The courtroom was cold, unforgiving. Chuka sat stiffly, dressed in oversized borrowed clothes, eyes downcast. Chidi looked defiant, almost bored. The judge's words hit like hammers. Community service. Mandatory rehab. Suspended sentence. One more mistake and they would serve real time. Outside the courtroom, Mr. Okonkwo leaned heavily against the car. "Mama raised kings," he whispered. "Not criminals." But the twins felt more like slaves than kings now, slaves to their own bad choices. Rehab was a nightmare. Early mornings. Tough counselors. Group sessions where strangers ripped open old wounds. Chuka tried. He really did. Chidi? He faked his way through, counting down the days until he could go back to the streets. In therapy one day, Chuka confessed, "I feel like I killed who I was meant to be." The counselor only nodded. "Now you have to fight to bring him back." Halfway through rehab, Chuka reached his breaking point. During a late-night session, hearing stories from other broken young men, stories of overdoses, prison time, deaths, he realized something chilling. He was just one bad night away from being a ghost story too. Chuka cried for the first time in years. Not silent tears, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. It was ugly, but it was also the start of healing. Chidi, however, had other plans. 2 days later, he slipped out during a supervised outdoor walk. Gone. No note. No goodbye. By the time the rehab center noticed, he was already back with the Golden Crew, living fast, burning what little future he had left. And Chuka? He stayed behind. Broken. Ashamed. But determined to find another way. Chuka completed rehab alone. When he returned home, the welcome was cold. Neighbors whispered behind their curtains. Old classmates crossed the street. Only Mrs. Okonkwo embraced him fully, tears soaking his shirt. "My son," she wept, "you are still my son." Healing wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, Chuka believed it might be possible. Chuka found a small job, sweeping floors at a mechanic's shop. It was humble, sweaty work, a far cry from the dreams his family once held. But every paycheck, no matter how small, was a seed planted toward a different future. And every evening, as he collapsed into bed exhausted but sober, he whispered, "One day at a time." Meanwhile, Chidi became a king among thieves. Money, fast cars, women. He flaunted his new lifestyle all over town, daring anyone to judge him. The Golden Crew treated him like royalty, until they needed someone to take the fall. But Chidi was too high to notice he was being set up. It happened fast. A fake deal. A fake buyer. A real gun. The police swooped in before Chidi could even blink. This time, there was no suspended sentence. No mercy. Handcuffed on the ground, surrounded by flashing lights, Chidi realized too late. The streets only love you until they don't. The iron gates clanged shut behind Chidi with a finality that shook even his hardened soul. Prison was nothing like the movies. No fast life here. Just cold cement, stale food, and regret. Chidi stopped being a king. He became a number. And for the first time in years, he missed his mother's prayers. Chuka visited the prison once. Chidi wouldn't even look him in the eye. So Chuka began writing letters instead. Letters full of memories. Of who they used to be. Of who they still could be. At first, Chidi never replied. But slowly, letter by letter, a crack of light began to seep into his dark world. Stress has a cruel price. Mr. Okonkwo's body, worn down by years of hard labor and heartbreak, finally gave out. A stroke left him partially paralyzed. The man who once lifted mountains for his family could now barely lift a spoon. Chuka took care of him. Patiently. Lovingly. Another act of redemption written quietly in the margins of his story. Slowly, the community began to see Chuka differently. It started small. An old teacher nodding hello at the market. A church elder slipping him a plate after service. Healing takes time. Forgiveness takes longer. But Chuka was willing to wait. One cold afternoon, Chidi shuffled into the prison visitation room, expecting nobody. But there she was, Mrs. Okonkwo. Older, smaller, but still fierce with love. She didn't scold. She didn't weep. She just said, "Come home, son. When you're ready." And for the first time in a long time, Chidi allowed himself to hope. Back in his cell, Chidi couldn't sleep. His mother's visit replayed in his mind over and over. No anger. No disappointment. Just love. It made him restless. Made him angry at himself. For the first time, he picked up a Bible left forgotten in the prison library. Not because he was religious, but because he needed to believe there was still something good left in him. He didn't know it yet, but that small act, that reaching out, was the start of his rebirth. Chuka, despite working 2 jobs and caring for his father, scraped together money to hire a lawyer to file an appeal for Chidi. It wasn't much of a chance, but it was something. In court, Chuka sat through every painful moment, praying that maybe, just maybe, life would give them another shot. When the appeal was finally granted for early parole, Chuka fell to his knees right there in the courtroom. Chidi came home looking nothing like the boy who once dreamed of being a doctor. Thinner. Quieter. Eyes haunted by things he wouldn't speak of. The house felt smaller now. Sadder. Mr. Okonkwo barely spoke. Mrs. Okonkwo had aged 20 years in spirit. But no one turned Chidi away. Sometimes love isn't loud. Sometimes it's just not locking the door when a prodigal son comes knocking. The past hung heavy between the brothers. One night, over a broken dinner table, Chuka finally spoke. "You almost killed Mama," he said quietly. "You almost killed yourself." Chidi's fork clattered onto his plate. He buried his face in his hands. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice cracking open. "It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough. But it was a start." Chidi tried to find work, but Ayegbaju had a long memory. Everywhere he went, doors slammed shut. Nobody wanted to hire that one from the newspapers. Frustrated, ashamed, he nearly gave up again. But Chuka wouldn't let him. "If the front door is closed," Chuka said, "we build a back door." Late one night, sitting outside with mosquitoes buzzing around them, Chuka had an idea. "Let's open a small car wash," he said. "Start with nothing. Prove everyone wrong." Chidi laughed bitterly at first. But the more they talked, the more hope flickered alive. It wasn't glory. It wasn't riches. But it was honest. And for once, that was enough. They started with 2 buckets, 3 old rags, and a cracked signboard. Okonkwo Brothers Car Wash. Some people came just to gawk. Some came to mock. But a precious few, came to support. Day after day, under the burning sun, they scrubbed and washed and sweated. And slowly, they washed away some of the stains from their past too. It started small. A customer praising them at the barber shop. A pastor recommending their service after Sunday Mass. Whispers turned into nods. Nods turned into greetings. Respect, once lost, can be rebuilt. Brick by painful brick. One afternoon, an old schoolteacher stopped by the car wash. "You were bright once," she said to Chidi, handing him a tip. "Don't let that light go out." Something shifted inside him. Chidi enrolled in night school the next week. He didn't tell anyone at first. He wanted to prove it to himself first. One day, a wealthy businessman's dusty Prado SUV pulled into their little car wash. Impressed by their hard work and politeness, he struck up a conversation. Within a week, he offered them a contract: clean all vehicles for his company's fleet. It wasn't millions. But to the brothers, it felt like the world was finally cracking open a window after slamming every door. One Sunday, for the first time in years, the Okonkwo family sat together at church. Not hiding in shame. Not weighed down by whispers. Just sitting, side by side, as a family. When the pastor called for testimonies, Chuka stood up. Voice shaking, heart full, he spoke. "We fell. We failed. But grace caught us when we thought we were finished." With savings from the car wash, the brothers rented a small shop space. They expanded into minor repairs. Oil changes. Battery checks. Customers liked them, not because they were perfect, but because they were real. From the ashes of their broken dreams, a new future was being rebuilt. One honest day at a time. News traveled fast. Of the old Golden Crew, 2 were dead. One was in prison for armed robbery. The rest scattered to different cities, running from ghosts they couldn't outrun. Sometimes, Chuka wondered, if they hadn't escaped when they did, would they be dead too? The thought chilled him to the bone. One day, a letter arrived. From Kelvin's mother. She wrote about grief. About forgiveness. About how proud she was that they were choosing a different path. "You cannot change the past," she wrote. "But you can honor it by changing your future." Both brothers wept over that letter. Months turned into a year. The business grew. They hired 2 boys from the neighborhood, young, wild, hungry, and taught them not just how to work, but how to dream again. The same lessons they almost forgot themselves. And the brothers learned. Sometimes your greatest pain becomes someone else's lifeline. One morning, Chidi received a letter. Accepted into a technical college program. Scholarship awarded. Full ride. He ran all the way home, waving the letter like a madman. Mrs. Okonkwo dropped her cooking spoon and burst into tears. Finally, dreams deferred were not dreams denied. Not all battles stay dead. One night after work, an old friend from the crew invited Chidi for just one drink. Chidi stared at the club entrance. The pounding music. The flashing lights. He turned around. And walked away. Some victories are loud. Others are silent but stronger. Mr. Okonkwo, now wheelchair-bound, smiled at Chidi from across the room one evening. It was small. It was tired. But it was real. "Good boy," he whispered. Those 2 words were worth more than any applause the streets could ever offer. Chuka dreamed of building a real auto shop. Big, busy, bustling. He sketched designs at night, fueled by hope, determination, and 1,000 mistakes he would never forget. Failure had taught him more than any success ever could. One evening, sitting under the stars, Chidi turned to Chuka. "You saved me," he said. Chuka shook his head. "No," he replied. "We saved each other." And for the first time in years, they both believed it. The brothers decided it was time to give back. They started visiting schools, telling their story. Not to boast, but to warn. They spoke about lost dreams, broken families, and second chances. And everywhere they spoke, eyes widened. Heads bowed. Seeds were planted. Some would grow. Some wouldn't. But they knew they had to try. The local government recognized their efforts. At a small town hall ceremony, they were awarded for outstanding youth rehabilitation and community impact. Standing on stage, trophy in hand, Chuka looked out at the crowd. He spotted their old teachers, their old classmates, even some old enemies. And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a disappointment. He felt like a testimony. With the award came donations, grants, support. Enough to finally open Okonkwo Auto Solutions, a full-service auto repair and car wash center. The grand opening was packed. Even the mayor came. Mrs. Okonkwo cried through the whole ribbon-cutting ceremony, her hands clasped tightly in prayer. During one of the school talks, Chuka met Ifunanya, a soft-spoken teacher with fierce eyes. She didn't care about his past. She cared about who he was fighting to become. Their friendship blossomed slowly, beautifully. For once, love didn't feel like a trap. It felt like freedom. Against all odds, Chidi walked across the stage in a black gown and cap, diploma in hand, head held high. As he spotted his family cheering wildly from the audience, tears blurred his vision. From a prisoner number to a graduate. Proof that no one is too far gone for redemption. That year, Mr. Okonkwo passed peacefully in his sleep. No sirens. No pain. Just soft breathing fading into silence. They buried him under the largest tree in Ayegbaju, as he had requested. And etched on his gravestone were the words he once spoke. Raise kings, even if they fall first. Chuka and Chidi often sat outside the new shop, watching the sunset paint the town golden. Sometimes, young boys would pass by, staring in admiration. Sometimes they stopped to help. Sometimes they just watched. The cycle of influence never really ends. And this time, it would be a good cycle. The brothers set up a foundation, offering scholarships and apprenticeships to troubled youths. If we can fall and rise again, Chuka often said, so can anyone. Every award they received, every hand they shook, every prayer they whispered was part of a legacy born from brokenness. Years later, Ayegbaju hosted a town reunion. Chuka and Chidi were called up to speak. As they stood on the stage, looking at familiar faces aged by time and stories, they realized something powerful. They were not just survivors. They were examples. Proof that even when you trade books for bottles, you can still trade regret for redemption. At the edge of town, under a wide mango tree, two brothers sat on an old wooden bench. Between them lay an old dusty bottle and a brand new textbook. Symbols of two paths, two lives, two choices. Chidi picked up the textbook, smiling at his brother. And together, they walked home, carrying not just books, but a future they fought like hell to earn.